Hello everyone, welcome back to e-marketing class. This is chapter 7 and session 6 of e-marketing. The topic is consumer behavior online. Now so far as you recall, we have also covered the global e-marketing, in which case we learn more about the infrastructure variations within the countries and how does it affect the e-marketing. But we have still not covered the fact what do people do online. This doesn't matter if they are in the developing countries or developed countries. We'll take an overview or a bigger picture and see what are some of the things people are doing online, and that's why the topic is consumer behavior online. So to begin with, let's have a look at the objectives. The first one is to discuss the general statistics about the internet population, describe the internet exchange process and the macro environment, which includes the technology, social, legal context in which the consumer participate in this process, outline the broad individual characteristics and consumer resources that consumers bring to the online exchange, and highlight the four main categories of the outcome that consumers seek from the online exchanges. So it'll be, as I said, a broader picture as to what are some of the things people do online. And once as marketers we understand those things which people do, like consumer behavior online, then that'll help us to come up with products and services which we can offer them online and fulfill their needs and wants, because that's the whole idea, how we can add value online. We learned that in the e-marketing research also, that how we gather the data, but in this case we learn more about what do people do online. At the beginning of the chapter there's a story, or shall we say a case study, which is related to what is called the customer story. And in this customer story, later on I would recommend you that you read that. In this customer story, they're talking about an individual or youngster who is 24-year-old. His name is Justin, and what does he do? Uh, let's say in his daily life or an adventure within his life, as far as using the technology and using the net. So the first thing, for example, it's talking about the iPod. Of course, the younger generation uses the iPod. So he listens to the iPod while his TV is tuned to the soccer game and his cell phone and PC are within the reach. He picks up his computer to find a blog mentioned during the broadcast, sees a video on the blog, and texts a friend about the video. So as you can see, we are talking about various technologies within the reach of this individual who's only 25 years of age, and see how he's using these interactively, all of these equipment. Then he also reaches up for the video title on the Google, just to search that and find a job posting on the Vimeo, an online video posting site. When you read this customer story in detail, you'll see that he went through this web title and noticed that there are something of interest to him. So he tried to apply for a job, and there are already so many people who have applied. So he writes a note. So he posted a link to the video and Vimeo site to his Twitter stream. Once again, as you can see, he's using all the technologies available within the reach. Justin is now a new customer or a consumer, a multitasker attending to different media simultaneously. So it used to be before that marketers were interested in radio, TV, for example, and they would see what are some of the things people listen to on the radio and watch on the TV. But now we are seeing a totally different things. In this case, the youngsters are multitaskers. They do more than one task. So as we saw above, three, four tasks the individual is doing, listening to the iPod, listening to the watching the video, and also calling someone and then sending a link to some of his friend. So of course now based on this, what do we as marketers learn from this? How can we capture the business of this kind of customer? And that's what is challenging for us because the individual is not on one place. The individual is doing the multitasking so many things. So we as marketer, we want his attention. And how do we get the attention of this customer or similar customers within this age category? Okay. That would be some of the things which we'll be talking about within this chapter 2. So the consumer in the 21st century, they have changed. We are seeing cases like in developed countries like the US, 76% of the US consumers use the internet. We have also seen in the globally marketing that the trends or the usage of internet is increasing in the rest of the world, especially the emerging economies. Also, we are seeing less connected groups tend to be older, less educated in ethnic minority groups, childless, rural areas, and lower income. So this is the rest of the 24% in the US they are talking about, because the question comes in why they are not using the internet. And these are probably very old people, not very educated, and they are into minorities groups and probably sort of underprivileged, and then childless, maybe rural areas, and the lower income. So we are more interested in that 76% those you who use the internet. In 2009, 1.8 billion people had access to the internet, which is still only 27% of the global population. That gives you an idea that the rest of the population is still does not have access to the internet. Top 10 countries account for 38% of all the users, and the adoption rate ranges from 7 to 77%. Now, this of course differs from country to country when we say adoption rate. In some countries, the penetration of the internet is very low, but in the others, it is much higher. Internet usage in the developed nations have reached a critical mass, leading the marketers to ask questions about consumer behavior on the net. So we will be focusing more on the developed countries because that's where more of the customers are. And once we learn about what they are doing on the net, we will have a pretty good idea as to how we can fulfill their needs. Since 1995 to 2010, have a look at the increase in the internet. So the adoption rate percentage has been going up and up. And all indicators are that even though in the developed countries it has reached the maturity, but in the developing countries it will still be penetrating more. Let's go back to the exchange process when we talk about the basic marketing, and we say that marketing is an exchange process, which means we are referring to the act of obtaining a desired object by offering something in return. So we might be interested in a certain product, and of course this is exchanged with the money in this case. In the case of barter, maybe a product is exchanged with the product in some cases. Exchange occurs within the following context. It could occur within technological um, circumstances, in the social, cultural, and legal circumstances. These are some of the macro environment, of course. And if you look at the page 178 of your text, you will see the exhibition 7.2, which talks about the exchange process. And of course, it is happening within that what we call the macro environment process. But have a look at the left side. It talks about the individual resources, the characteristics of the resources, and then the exchange process happens. But this is a little bit different than the market exchange process which we talked about. We are talking about, in this case, the internet exchange process. So of course, some of the variables which we are seeing up are the technological variables, social variable, and the legal variables. Within those variables, we see this exchange going on, and the internet exchange happens, in which case the outcome is the connection or the interactivity, creating creating content, for example, enjoyment, learning, and trade. All of these are happening within the online exchange process. So depend on the individual characteristics and depend on the resources available to the individual. We see the exchange process and we see the outcomes. So for example, someone wants to watch a video on the internet and he or she has the internet connection, and the outcome would be the watching the video or enjoyment. Yeah. Similarly, someone wants to take an online course, would also be enrolling into the course. Within this internet exchange process, we will see learning happening, online learning. Okay. Yeah, we have this diagram over here too also. So firstly, the technological context. 63% of the online Americans connect to the internet at home with the broadband. Broadband users, of course, enjoy multimedia, games, music, and entertainment, then do those accessing from the mobile device. So the consumer behavior in this case is that when they are using the broadband and they are using it for the purpose of watching the um, videos, playing games, and listening to the music. It is interesting that at a mature country like the US, where the internet maturity, there are about 26 electronic devices for media and communication available at each of the home. Now, this includes, of course, the TV, the radio, the iPod, the mobile phone, etc., etc. Okay, and we are seeing an further increase in there too. So from here, we can learn that in the developing countries also, the trend will be towards this way. Now, of course, the question comes in that when people are online, what are they doing when they are using the media? Majority of them are using it for accessing the internet, or some of them are watching the TV and the video, music, etc., etc. These are all based on the daily media used or the minutes used. And of course, as you can see, the trends are now that this TV and video usage is probably declining, and this same time from the TV radio they are taking it to the internet, and especially the younger generation too. From the social and the cultural context, the cornerstone of attracting customers online, which is how do we as marketers attract the customers online? This is based on three areas: the reputation, the relevance, and the engagement. In other words, there are hundreds of billions of websites. How can we attract the customers online? and we will learn that it is based on these three areas: the reputation, the relevance, and the engagement. So we'll talk about all three of those. We all know, first of all, that the power is shifting to the consumers. We have learned that before also, that now customer is in command. Online, the customer has the right, or the customer can switch off a website or go to a certain website. It all depends on the customer. So that's the customer. The power is shifting to the consumer, and marketers are not as successful to interrupt this communication, which they used to do for TV and radio as well. So, and they are when they draw consumers and engage them with the relevant content. The cornerstone for attracting them is by these three areas: the reputation, the relevance, and the uh, engagement. So you want to engage the customers. These are the three areas, as we said: relevance, engagement, and the reputation. For example, in the case of reputation, the brand image and reputation are based on the market perception. So obviously companies need to create a better reputation, or a right perception in the market. Companies with good reputation are considered authentic, honest, and they apologize for errors and follow through on their brand promise. Of course, when they do that, the customers reward them by receiving more recommendation from the consumers, enjoy longer and more profitable relationship, and sell more products and services. As you can see, this is the exact same explanation as we would do offline. So the consumer behavior is not changed. The consumer still is looking for the value. And in this case, as we said, the reputation is very important. And the positive word of mouth, it does play a role. Actually, if we think about it, it has even become more important when we talk about reputation. Because what happens is that if even few of your customers are dissatisfied, online they can create a problem for you, because that would then ruin your reputation if they are dissatisfied. And there have been so many cases in which just few dissatisfied customers have been able to, you know, it is called the online word of mouth, or which is also called word of mouse. Now it's called more word of mouse, because in this sense what we are saying is the speed of this, uh, the word of mouse spreads so fast that it's even faster than the word of mouth. Now, of course, then the question comes in: who do people trust? And we have a very interesting chart in on page 182. If you see that, they have some really good uh, research data from 2010, in which they asked the people who do they trust. And it says, if you heard information from each of these resources, how credible would the information be? And 64% of them said that they would trust an academic or an expert. So 64% of them, this is the highest trust they have. They don't trust much of the advertisement or the messages from the company. Similarly, 52% of them said financial analyst or the industry analyst. And what is interesting is this, that the 42% or 44% of them said that they would trust a person like themselves. Now, this is very interesting, because this is even more than the employees of an organization, which is 32% only. So what are the implications of that? If there are about 44% of the people who trust the other people like them, then that has implications. And of course, we will learn in the social media marketing chapter that also people trust or their friends more than anybody else. For this reason, social media has become very, very powerful now in the sense that if on the social media, if I put, for example, something which I have utilized or if I have learned something about and I like it and I put it on the social media, then all of my friends at least would be, because they trust me on that, they would also prefer that product or service and they would try it out as well. So that has got an implications on there too. Apart from the technological context, the other one is the legal context. Now, of course, sorry, before I go move further, let's talk about the relevance. How relevant is the information for the target customer and how engaged you can keep the customer in there. And that's what the online process is. If the customers come in for the first time to your website and they just like the flash and all those things, uh, now after that, next time they would come back and then they would say, what next? In other words, what are you offering apart from a beautiful looking web page, which is just attractive first time, but now you need to offer them value. You need to offer them maybe updated information, maybe provide them products and services which are unique. That's how you need to keep them engaged. Okay. So moving to the legal context, despite the piracy laws, illegal used software is expanding still. Uh, as you all know, it is not only illegal, it's unethical also to copy the software because people spend or companies spend lots and lots of money on developing that software, but because of the fact that it's much easier to copy a software, people do copy that. Uh, Certainly governments are working on that and even technology is being used to see how this could be protected. When we talk about the ethical issues in the e-marketing, there'll be a chapter in the end. I will explain that to you how and what is being done at this point to stop the illegal use of the software. Not only just the software, but any other intellectual property, which includes the copying of the books as an example, copying of the music also. All of this comes under the piracy laws. In spite of the CAN spam law, which is in this case, it stops the companies to send what we call the spam. Spam is when you want some unwanted emails. So it has still increased, even though there are restrictions for that, but the fact is that it's so easy for the companies to send those emails to millions of people on one click. That's why they do that. However, I must add over here that it does affect the reputation of the company. So if, for example, if I receive a spam from a company, maybe one time, twice, after that I'm going to block that. And the reputation about that company in my mind will be that why are they bothering me? Why are they disturbing me? I have other things to do too. On the other hand, if the same content, if I receive it based on their permission, then that would be more welcoming. Okay. However, when we also know about the recording industry, when they sued the illegal music downloader, consumer behavior changed because now we are seeing that more and more consumers online are purchasing the music in the form of apps. In 2002, 37% of the online consumers shared the music, but in 2004 it went down. Before that, people would not think that it is illegal to share the music online. This is called the file sharing, if you remember that, when people used to share the files with each other. Individual characteristics and resources we saw in that diagram on the left side. Let me go back again to tell you what I'm talking about. Here, individual characteristics and resources. So I just want to explain that to you about how does it affect. So it affects the individual use. Demographics such as the age factor, the income, the education, the ethnicity, and the gender are the areas which will affect the usage of the internet. Of course, common sense is that we all know that within a certain age group, let's say like 15 to 25 age, the usage of internet is much more because these are youngsters, they're staying in touch. However, we are seeing now the older generation also in their 50s, 60s also using the internet very comfortably. It is also affected, the usage is also affected by the income, by the education, how educated people are, and by the ethnicity and the gender. Secondly, the attitude towards the technology. So individual characteristics, attitude towards technology does make a difference whether the individual is online and how long is this individual using the internet compared to someone who's not really that interested in technology. Online skills and experience also makes a difference. Someone who might be like a tech person would be spending much more time on the internet, using its capabilities and experience to for the purpose of using the internet. Similarly, the goal orientation people, though now we are finding more and more people, for example, taking courses online and using lots of things for the purpose of the internet for their own professional development as well. So as you can see, if we know these things based on that, then we are able to offer them the products and services. So as an example, we are seeing now in more and more universities, colleges offering online courses, just like this one you are taking. The only reason why it is done is that now your generation, it is much more comfortable using the technology. Your attitude towards technology is much more positive than it used to be before. So 10, 15 years ago, there were not only less colleges, universities offering courses, but there was not much demand for that because people were not very comfortable. But now we are seeing that online skills and experience has gained and people are much more comfortable taking courses. And in the coming years, we are seeing more and more trends, people using the technology and using the internet more often. Consumer resources. Consumer perceive value as benefit minus cost. Of course, you know the formula. Consumer value is equal to value benefits minus the cost. So anytime when they see more benefits, then they will be utilizing those resources. So the cost constitutes the consumer's resources of exchange. How much does it cost them? I mean, in other words, the monetary cost, the time cost, energy, and the psychic cost. So for example, if you want to purchase a car and if you go online and try to get lots of information which is available now regarding the competitor, regarding the features of the car, then that will cut down the time for you to go to the showrooms and test yourself or learn more about those features. So once you have that information, as a matter of fact, right now about 70% of the people who purchase car in the developed countries, they first do some research on the internet before they go and make a decision about the car. So that is very interesting because this way they are cutting down the cost of time and energy and the psychic cost also. Psychic cost is the time or the energy or the psychological stress which you go through. There is some cost involved in that as well. We are also seeing another area in which case we are seeing that people are now using, or they're combining the home internet usage with the work internet usage too. One of the reason is that the technology is available. I mean, in other words, for us at home also, when we have technology available, it's no different than the technology available at the office. So for this reason, we feel comfortable working out of their home, I mean, doing our work at home as well. So this way, then we are able to, we could spend time in the office, but instead, if we are able to, research has also shown that people uh, do visit the web pages at home as well. And of course, for the companies, they don't mind, because if the individual can operate from home, also checking their website, checking their emails, and responding to their queries for the company, then that would not be a problem. And that is what is called the multitasking, which I mentioned to you previously also. I'm sure more and more of us will be using internet at home for the purpose of the work as well. And it is increasing. That's another part of the consumer behavior, and that's the reason why companies are offering hardware which could be used at home as well, so that individuals feel comfortable working at home also for their office. Internet is also being used for learning and getting information, and we have some very good information over here. As you can see, so many things are being done in order to, yeah, I mean, when you are using the net, you use the search engine, you can map or the driving directions. Of course, now when we are talking about this, we are also talking about the utilization of your smartphones too. So that's included in there. In other words, we are talking about access to the internet, getting health information, getting hobby information, checking the weather, getting news, making travel a reservation. Lots of people are doing that, getting some political news, also finding out how to repair information as an example, research for school or training purpose, finding phone numbers, info about the job, virtual tour of location, etc. Okay. As you can see, all of the even religious and spiritual information, listen or live events online, and taking a class online for fun as well. All of this tells you that more and more people are now using the internet. These are some of the areas. If we as marketers can pick up some of these areas to offer products and services where it would add value for the customers or for those who are online, then of course we could be in business. Finally, have a look at how it is being used for business, the internet. Trading online. Now, this is again in the developed economy like the US. Have a look at this. 81% of the people research the product before buying. So that would be like, as I told you, the example of the car. Buy a product. There are 75% of the people who would even make a decision online for purchasing products online. Buying and making a travel reservation, 66%. Now, of course, this tells you that if there's a travel agency which has got an office and they have not set up any kind of websites yet, pretty soon they will be in deep trouble, because more and more people are using the internet for the reservation purpose. So they will not be coming to this travel agency anymore unless they add some value for them. One of the ways by which they can add value is by offering them some tours or offering them better value. Paying bills online, paying to access the digital content, participate in the online auction. By the way, lots of people are now even accessing the newspapers online and asking them for their previous articles, and that also brings in money for the newspapers. Sell something online, 15%. Taking a class for the college credit, 13, you see. And this, chances are that this is probably now doubled than when they reported that. This was reported a couple of years ago in 2012. So if today, if we do that, you will see that more and more universities are offering the classes online for credit purpose too. Buying and selling stocks online also 11. So this sort of gives you an idea as to how important internet has become for the consumers, and how they are utilizing in their daily lives. And essentially, as I said, it would be an interesting but a short chapter. So I would wrap up over here. If you have any questions on this, feel free to write me or come on my Skype page and ask me a question if you have. So until the next session, thank you and have a good day.